Now, the only ships we had in those days were the World War One destroyers. Now, we had hundreds of them that were left over from World War One that we put in mothballs. And then, of course, the first thing was that England was in trouble. And Roosevelt wanted to help them, but Congress wouldn't allow it. They didn't want us to get involved in this war that had nothing to do with us. The first thing we would run into was we were being shot at. Torpedoes were coming at us from the German U-boats that were sitting off the coast, sinking all our ships, and we weren't even at war at that time. And it was quite a thing. So what we would do is every morning and every evening at dawn and dusk, we would go to general quarters and we would train our guns at the burns or at the birds and make believe, and then we would train it at Porpoise, saying it's the submarine, make believe. But many times that they would be shooting torpedoes at us, and of course we would, since I only remember the times when we were heading north, because when they'd sound general quarters, we would turn to the right, to starboard. So it had to be that we were heading north, and we would go after the submarine, and we had depth charges. It had settings on the side of the 300-pound depth charges that you would set for whatever depth you wanted them to explode. And that's what would happen. So when we would get over the submarine, which was, which would dive down, and we would drop a pattern of 4. First port, and then starboard, and then port and starboard, because we had them on both sides. And that's what would happen. And they would, of course, explode. And then we would make a circle coming around and then come back across and drop 4 more. But here I remember the first time we dropped these first 4 was off of Cape Hatteras. Now, Cape Hatteras is known as the graveyard of the Atlantic because there are many ships that are sunk there. And you can see a lot of masts and sterns of ships sticking out every here and there. And most of them are on the charts marked, so you know where they are. But if they are recent sinkings, then they're not on the chart yet. And anyhow, so it was off of Cape Hatteras where we were being shot at, and we made a hard right, and at flank speed, which is as fast as we can go, we're headed for this submarine and drop our 4. What happened was, since it was the first time we're doing it, I don't know whether it's because it was so shallow there or what the story was, but when they exploded, it lifted the back end of the ship up out of the water, and then we slid down like a sliding pond. And here our rudder is jammed hard to port. So now we're going around in circles, and we have no control because we can't get that rudder stuck. So all the engineers are working on it desperately because there's a German submarine out there that wants to sink us. Anyhow, they finally get it under control. And all I could think of was the guys on the sub must be laughing at us and thinking they think we're over there, but we're not. We're over here. That's what my thought was. Yeah, what happened was we had just come back from a convoy that we were escorting a convoy into Norfolk, Virginia, and as we pull up to the dock, the Pier 5, what was, they set off general quarters. And I said to the buddy next to me, I said, somebody's going to be in big trouble doing that for my birthday. It was December 7th, 1941. And they said, everybody had to man their battle stations. And we found out that Pearl Harbor was bombed. I says, what's Pearl Harbor? I never heard of it because I only did duty in the Atlantic and Pearl Harbor is in the Pacific. Anyhow, that's when I knew about Pearl Harbor. Now, there's always a watch on the machine gun and on the anti-aircraft guns, where before we only did it during general quarters. Now it's 24 hours a day, and we don't know what's coming and what's happening, or we don't know anything because they really didn't tell us the whole story about how many people were killed at Pearl Harbor. They didn't want us to know. There's a lot of things the government doesn't want you to know if it's something bad. And that's what happened now. It's anyhow, it was not too long after that they says, hey, Miller, pack your bag. You were getting transferred. You're getting transferred to shore duty. And I figured that's because I was so seasick all the time. And they said, no, they just need you for a different job. So there was 3 of us that they transferred that day. And now, of course, we're going to the air station. And they started teaching us how to fix an airplane. The first thing they taught us was the propeller, how to take the propeller off and put the propeller on, and how the propeller is controlled by the pilot, that it changes the blades, which I never knew that you could change the blades for different speeds. It was really amazing things I found. But anyhow, so here we have to learn about how to repair engines, how to oil them, how to check them, how to repair them, and I was really good at it because mechanically I like mechanical things, and I was really good at it. And then again, I had learned all of these different names and definitions when I was in the Junior Naval Reserve. I knew what the control surfaces were. I knew what made the plane fly forward. I knew what kept it in the air. I knew so many things about airplanes that nobody else knew because nobody was in that Junior Naval Reserve. Anyhow, so I quickly moved up the ladder. I was only there a few months, and they said, boy, you're really good at this. We're going to make you a 3rd-class petty officer. And I said, oh, that's nice. Then I was still working on it, and a month later, they said, we're making you a petty officer. That's the 2nd time they told me. Let me jump ahead. 4 of those converted tankers and the Ranger that's what was needed for this invasion. You know, we didn't know that it was the invasion of North Africa, and that we were taking Patton there with all his what do you call those things that Patton's army had, tanks. So here we're off the coast of Africa, and we have 103, I think 102, 103 ships, and just as far as you could see in every direction. Now, as we're going, every once in a while, they would send a destroyer back behind us to make sure that we weren't being followed by U-boats. And because in order to follow us, they would have to be on top of the water. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep up with us. So, and they would find that there were nothing following us, so we would continue. Now, when we get off the coast of Africa, we divide into three parts. There was a northern part, a center part, and a southern part. And we were the middle part, which was the center. We were headed for Casablanca, where one group was headed for the airport, which is north of Casablanca, and the other was south, where there was an airport where Patton was with the South group, because he was going to, once they got the beach secured, he was going to come ashore with his tanks, and he would come north and attack Casablanca from the south, and then the ones in the north would be coming from the north, and we're coming straight in. And we didn't know whether the French, even though they're Vichy French, we didn't know if they were going to fight us or help us. We had tried to send them somebody to see if we could get a commitment from them, what they were going to do. But they didn't know what they were going to do, because I don't know if you know what the Vichy French were. Yeah. So what happened was, the order was that normally we would bring our battleships and cruisers in and bombard the hell out of everything there. And then the landing craft would come in and take over. And our planes would be protecting everything. So since we didn't know what was going to be, we told everybody, all the ships and all the planes, that we're not to fire first. But once they fire at us, then the word will come out, batter up, and you can fire back. And that's how it was. But before we did, no, I think that was a different landing. Okay, so now what happened was we're coming in, and we had 5 submarines of ours there that came out of New London, Connecticut, and they were stationed off the coast to give everybody a position, so they know that they're in the right spot for the invasion. And that was what the submarines were there for. So anyhow, we sent our planes up, and next thing you know, they're shooting at us. So we say, batter up, and we start to fire back. And this is the first time in history that the same planes are fighting each other. What happened was during World War One, we had trained the French escadrille we trained them how to fight, and we gave them airplanes, and now they're going to use these planes that we gave them against us. It was the Vichy French that were fighting us. So now they're shooting at us, and we're shooting at them, and we're trying only to hit the shore batteries that are manned by Germans, yeah, and the Nazis, and so those are the things that we're trying to knock out. But as our ship's getting too close, they're getting direct hits on some of our ships, and we lost some people. But anyhow, so now the war is on, and it's a shooting war, and we're shooting down their planes, and they're shooting down ours, and it's quite a battle. And we had to have some destroyers out to protect us from the U-boats that are out there in the Atlantic. All right, to make a long story short, when Patton is ready, I think a couple of days later, Patton was in position in the southern part of Casablanca, ready for the invasion that he would come in, and Casablanca surrendered. So the Vichy French in Africa surrendered because we were doing so much damage, and anyhow, so after a few days, they surrendered, and the army took over. All the landings were done. There were the last day we were there, the German U-boats arrived and started sinking our ships, and they sank several troop ships, and the ocean was very rough on the shores, and a lot of the boats that took the military to the landing cracked up. So half of the boats on all these ships were destroyed just from the weather and cracking up on the shore. And some of them landed on the wrong shore. Anyhow, so we finally, when they surrendered, the Shenango only carried 70 some odd Army planes. So when the airfield there was taken, they sent one plane. The planes had to be catapulted off. The planes couldn't fly off of that carrier because they were Army planes, and they catapulted the first one off to go and take a look and see what was doing. So when he got there, he realized that no planes can land on that airfield, because what happened was that our bombers had dropped bombs on it, and our planes had shot up all these planes that were on there, and there were holes all over the runways, and the planes would just crack up when they came in to land. So I don't know why he couldn't use the radio in his plane, because he cracked up. So he had to run down to the wharf and told one of the ships to radio them not to send the planes. So when they did that, they sent back too late. They're already in the air. They didn't wait for his okay. So now all these planes are going into this field, and many of them cracked up. So I don't know. They had their hands full. But anyhow, uh, the Vichy French surrendered. So they luckily the troops came in and took over, and now what happened was the we headed back to the United States through the sub-infested waters, and we made it back, which was good. But in going back, we went through a hurricane and did a lot of damage to. We lost some of our planes. The the other ships lost a lot of their lifeboats. The the hurricane did a lot of damage to many of the ships going back to the States. So we went back. Yeah, that's good. Now we're back in Norfolk at the air station, and we get transferred off the ship because the Swanee was only temporary for us. The Swanee was number 27, and the Shenango is 28, and our squadron is 28. So our squadron belonged from the very beginning on the Shenango, but since that was tied up with all those planes, the Army planes that they were ferrying, now the Shenango is coming back through that hurricane. And what happened was, did you ever open a can of sardines with a key? And no, but anyhow, you take this key and you put the slip into the key, and now you roll the key, and it rolls the top of the can back. And that's what happened to the Shenango's flight deck. It just rolled back from the hurricane and the heavy seas. And, it was so light that I'm surprised they made it back, because they had left all the oil for all of the ships that were still staying at the at Africa, at Casablanca Harbor. They gave their oil to all those ships before they left. So now they have no planes and no oil, or enough to get back. And so it made it so light. So it was tossed around like like a toy. Anyhow, they finally made it back, and nobody could believe that the damage on the Shenango was from the hurricane, not from the battle. So they had a lot of work to do on the Shenango. So what they did when Halsey found out what a great job our planes did for the invasion of Africa, he says, "I want those 4 planes in the Pacific now." And he meant as soon as possible. So what happened was, when we got back to Norfolk, the other ships, the other 3 converted tankers, didn't have too much damage, but they were quickly repaired, and they headed for the Panama Canal to go to the Pacific Ocean. So, but the Shenango had so much work, it was delayed there. So we didn't leave till December. So that was December of 42.